Hell is empty and all the devils are here. One of the most impressionable scenes in Dawn of the Dead is when news clips are flashing on the screen showing the destruction around the city. A man preaching said, quote, "Hell is overflowing and Satan is sending his dead to us. Why? Because you have sex out of wedlock. You kill unborn children, you have man-on-man relations, same-sex marriage. How do you think your God will judge you? Well, friends, now we know. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth." End quote. Breaking down this quote with biblical references, even with only preliminary knowledge, and the most common stories of resurrection in the Bible are not those of horror, rather seen as miracles or blessings. Not even touching the issues of morals with a 10-foot pole, I'm going to examine the issue of zombies from a biblical perspective. Although there's no reference specifically to zombies in the Bible, with the use of the word zombie, the topic of resurrection is poignant. There are examples of resurrection in the book of Kings, Matthew, and John, just to name a few. Most often, God glorifies his son Jesus in allowing mortals to live again. In all of my found examples, the people living again have been previously dead return to their normal lives without any characteristics typical of those of a zombie. The Bible confronts the issue of the dead, the undead, and the living. The quote from the movie references the rapture, or rather the time is ending and God is punishing those who have sinned on earth. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 52, the rapture is explained in a far better light. Quote, "In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we shall be changed." End quote. This excerpt highlights the Christian belief that our souls are immortal, and is not referencing the kind of undead or zombie found in most literature and movies we have analyzed. So many of the questions surrounding zombies regard ethics, having to do with the soul and possession of a body. It would be naive to think that in Haitian culture, the origin of zombie culture was not affected by Christian teachings and beliefs. Most obvious is the example found in John, where the story of Jesus' death is described. On Friday, Jesus is hung on the cross and pronounced dead. Then Sunday morning, his body is missing from the tomb in which it was placed. Jesus is the only example in the Bible of someone who was raised from the dead but did not go on to die a natural death. Although the body of Jesus was never found, after it was discovered missing from the tomb, it was and is widely believed that he was brought back to life in spirit or otherwise. Because of the fact that he was considered to be holy and the Son of God, it is then reasonable that he transcends, pardon the pun, ordinary stories of the dead being reawakened. One great similarity to the readings we've been doing about Haitian traditions is the quote from Matthew 27, verse 52 and 53. Quote, "The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised and coming out of the tombs. After his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many." End quote. Where in Haitian culture it was fearsome to recognize your deceased loved ones because they had obviously been made zombies if they were out of their grave, in this example God is said to have given life again to the dead on account of his son's death. Another translation reads, quote, "The tombs broke open and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life." End quote. This awakening was to prove that Jesus, who was so recently crucified, was indeed the Son of God. It likely would have been just as startling for the people to see their loved ones alive and walking the earth again as it is in the Haitian examples, although not noted in the Bible. In both examples, the fearsome trait is that there is a greater power vested in someone that can use it to control not only the dead, but also the living. Also similar to Haitian culture is Revelations chapter 9, verse 6, quote, "And in those days people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them." End quote. This quote portrays that death is the ultimate satisfaction to suffering. So when zombies are subjugated to slavery, once they realize they are zombies, through eating salt or some other form, they once again long to be dead. This idea makes you really think about the saying, "rest in peace." Also similar to this naivete the zombies experience before they realize that they are zombies is this quote from Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 10. Quote, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, for there is no work or thought or wisdom or knowledge in Sheol to which you are going." End quote. This quote is talking to the people on earth who don't even realize that they are living in sin or committing acts against God, and it matters very little as Sheol, where they are headed, is not subject to God's values or protection. Moving on now, the concept of actual resurrection. Resurrection is a Christian term meaning returning from the dead or arising from decay. In thinking about resurrection, one must decide whether or not he or she who has been brought back to life is the person they were before. As explained in Freud's The Uncanny, the theme of double, or two of something, is very frightening to the human psyche. Especially in regards to the living. If something is pronounced dead, to see it again alive is very frightening. So in Dawn of the Dead, for the news to be broadcasting a man exclaiming that the dead again walk the earth, it is a direct reference to the fear of the devil. Like the doppelganger who intimidates its victim and ravages through their life, the zombie or undead is more terrifying because of the second coming, or doubling of the actual person, but with or without their mind. Quote, "For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Their love and their hate and their envy have all perished, and forever they will have no more share in all that is done under the sun." End quote, from Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 5 and 6. It took me until reading Revelations again, in the description of heaven, to realize that those residing in heaven could be considered zombies. For they have been given eternal life, by God rather than a voodoo priest, but in as literal terms as this can be spoken in, they have been given second life. Quote, "The rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy are those who have part in the first resurrection." End quote, from Revelations 20, verse 5 and 6. This describes the priests that were first brought into heaven, but to suggest that heaven is full of zombies, the soul would have to die, which, because the soul is often regarded as immortal, then there would not have been a resurrection. From the Pythagorean concept of the soul, that a soul is deathless and instead migrates from body to body, although ancient, it seems that what he is saying, and Christians agree with, is that the soul is immortal. Finally, I will draw that Haiti as a country was very strongly influenced by the Catholic Church, and therefore much of its culture surrounding zombies and voodoos reflect biblical themes. From a biblical viewpoint, the undead, or those who were once dead, were not seen as monsters, with those characteristics being added later to add the thrill of the horror genre, or were manifested in Haiti. In conclusion, the fear-mongering that the news broadcast in Dawn of the Dead utilizes is common, but I find a bit of a stretch. Undoubtedly, there are biblical examples that would support the claim that a zombie apocalypse could be a result of sin, and I did not intentionally negate them. But instead, for the purpose of this presentation, I highlighted the fact that although zombies were not found in the Bible as we know them today, in biblical times, the lines between living and the dead were even cloudier than they are now.